Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Football Show with No Name, or we gonna call it today because it seems like we're gonna do a theme every week. We'll just call it the Bipocalypse episode, as Ferg and I were talking about it. Ferg, why don't you run down some numbers real quick that we were just running over before we get started here? Who's on bye? What we got looking like today? Give me some names.
So if you're slack and you just don't care about your lineups, I'm going to give you all these people you need to be getting out of your lineup. So real football, missing in action this week. It's going to be the Bills, Chargers,
just the teams.
Cowboys, the Jags, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota.
Oh, so for everybody listening out there, there's a lot of lineup shifting that's going to be happening. And we can talk about a little bit of that in a little while. It looks like we're missing the commish today, at least for right now. So, it's a shame that the commish is missing. And I think I know why. Because in our league of record, I took him down. I didn't even need the Sunday night or Monday night game. It was over before it started, really. It was a tight game. I only beat him by 15, but I beat him, and he was done, I think, after the 4 o'clock games, and so was I. So I am now 4-2, jumped up from 6th to 3rd in our league of records. So what say you? How'd your weekend up?
Overall, 6-5. I mean, we had a lot of injuries in here, a lot of injuries. In our league of record, though, I have crept into what would be the final playoff spot right now at 3-3. Nice. Shout out to Dorian. Thank you, Dorian, for the get right game that I had this week. 142-92, pretty much in the bag. It was handled. I will give this credit to Dorian. Dorian has a really strong team on the IR list. She's missing Edward Solaire, CMC, and Russell Wilson all off of her team. So,
she's got the all injured team. So congratulations, Dorian, on that. So if that was your goal, Dorian, at the beginning of the season, you managed to draft very, very well. All right. So let's get right into it, Ferg. Let's talk about some heavy hitters, man. And we can't talk about heavy hitters on this show. It doesn't seem like, except for 2 weeks ago, without mentioning the king himself, Mr. Derrick Henry. 20 for 143 and 3. And just for everybody out there, in case you didn't know and not paying attention, that is his third 3-touchdown game this year. Okay. So just to let everybody know, he is the leading fantasy point scorer for the running back position with 783 points. Closest to him is Nick Chubb, or 783 yards. Closest to him is Nick Chubb with 523 yards. He is definitely the NFL rushing leader. And yes, Nick Chubb didn't play last week. Yes, Nick Chubb also has Kareem Hunt. However, you can't stop Derrick Henry. You can only hope to slow him down. And Mr. Micah Hyde, props to you, brother, for standing in front of the freight train when the train was coming down the tracks, because you were in open field and you just stood there. And to Derrick Henry's credit, he didn't try to move. He didn't try to juke left. He didn't try to juke right. He didn't try to jump over him. He just said, I'm just going to go right through him.
Right through him.
And it was better than the Josh Norman thing. He did slow Derrick Henry down. He was not able to talk to him. Yeah, R.I.P. Josh Norman. His career was never the same after that. All right, so, and then I have one more before I want to take a pause on mine and let Ferg go with his. Kirk Cousins. Oh, my goodness. It was 7-3 at halftime or 10-7 at halftime or something like that. And then he ended up with 373 and 52.6 fantasy points for those keeping track. It was a very good game. Adam Thielen actually came to light. He'll get an honorable mention here. He had 11 for 135 and 1. I don't think he had 2 touchdowns, right? I think it was 1 touchdown.
Just one.
So welcome back, Adam Thielen. First 100-yard game, first double-digit catch game this year. So welcome back, Adam Thielen. And Ferg, what you got?
So I'm accused of being a Cowboy hater, so I'm going to give out my first star to CD. CD had been getting some flack from the fantasy community a couple of weeks ago. 9 for 149 and 2 touchdowns on 11 targets. I think we talked about Waddle. I don't know if we talked about him yet, but Alabama kid, 10 catches, only 70 yards, but he did have 2 touchdowns, and he got thrown to 13 times. So Tua, obviously, his boy loves him.
Well,
a guy
they have that connection from Bama, so
definitely. Now, our usual suspect, he still has to get an award though. Mr. Cup, 9 for 130 with 2 touchdowns on 12 targets. We're going to talk a little later about making sure we play all of our Rams this week. But right now, Cooper Kupp, 68 targets this year. Bobby Trees only with 44. And we had a long, drawn-out segment at the end of last week's show about Mr. Gruden. And so we had to see how the Raider players would react after that. Next week with a new coach, new play calling in the ear. Had to give one to Derek Carr. Derek Carr came through 18 to 27, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns. If you're in a league like some of our leagues where you get bonuses for 40-point catches, he had bombs.
Henry Ruggs.
51, 49, 40, and then just for then 48 Ruggs, 33 and 31. So just air it out, baby. And in honor of Al Davis, the Raiders went really airborne this week. And then I think I had one more. One of our guys.
You can't go away from the Raiders without mentioning the star of the Raiders, Kenyon Drake, last week with 2 touchdowns and that ridiculous catch in the end zone. That ball was placed just perfectly right over his shoulder, and then he just hopped into the end zone. It was fantastic. Welcome back to fantasy football relevancy, at least for 1 week, Kenyon Drake, when nobody plays you. So continue, Ferg.
And then Mr. Noah Fant. Showing up, Noah Fant. Showing up. It's a lot of guys in that second, I guess what we call that 6 to 15 tight end rung that we weren't really talking about around draft time that are really outperforming our Darren Wallers, even our Kelseys. Noah Fant last week, 9 of 97 on 11 targets, 82 gloves. Way to go getting the ball to my guy in about 5 of my teams here. He's my starting tight end, unfortunately. But
dude. He was the number 1 tight end last week.
And then honorable mention to a guy we pumped up in our waiver wire last week, Khalil Herbert, 18 points.
Yep.
Keep it going,
2
Khalil.
touchdowns, right?
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to do this week against Vita Vea and them, but hey.
Well, that all depends if Damian Williams is active off the COVID list. There's still, as of last time I checked, that was a couple hours ago, there was no news about Damian Williams coming off the COVID reserve list. So if Damian Williams comes off the COVID reserve list, then Khalil Herbert's probably not as good of a play as he was last week. But at least for those out there who played him and who had him, congratulations, because you did have a good week and you probably weren't expecting that much out of him anyway. And a couple things. First, don't forget this podcast is sponsored by Phoenix Physical Therapy and Wellness, 500 Benson Road and Garner. Give them a call. That information is down here scrolling at the bottom of the screen. And put your questions in the comments. We will definitely get to them, as we always do. Now, before we go back to my honorable mention, because I have a something I want to talk about and something I need everybody's help out there trying to wrap my mind around. Okay. Let's talk about some duds, right? So we talked about this before we came on the air. We have different duds of the week. You will not mention this receiver by name anymore. And that's Mr. Allen Robinson. Even though he had 7 targets, he ended up with 4 catches for 53 yards. So in a full point PPR, you got 9 points out of the guy. It's probably his best it's definitely his best since week 1 when he had that 1 touchdown for like 40 yards. I know, put your pinky finger up, Ferg. And Devontae Smith, I fully expected him to have a really good game. 4 targets, 2 catches, 31 yards. I felt personally betrayed because I played him in one of my leagues, feeling like it was going to be a good week. So, Ferg, duds.
Duds are Burnett Snooker players of the week. Let's start back with Tampa Bay. On the flip side of Antonio and playoff Lenny having a great game, Godwin and Evans. Godwin 5 for 43. Mike Evans 2 for 27. A guy, our MVP of last week, or maybe 2 weeks, Lamar Jackson, I mean, they destroy for them to destroy the Chargers like that, and this guy only get 167 yards with 2 picks. I mean, he was bailed out by the 51 yards of rushing, but
okay.
That was
so let's talk about this real quick. So Latavius Murray, Ian, I agree. Latavius, and he was my number 2 draft pick in the league. So Latavius Murray had a touchdown and then went out, right? And then for some ungodly reason, Le'Veon Bell got a touchdown. Still haven't figured that out. And then Devontae Freeman got a touchdown. So this was the all Madden 06 squad out there playing fucking football, getting touchdowns and stealing them from Lamar Jackson, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, the whole 9 yards, right? So Mark Andrews still had a touch, I think, pretty sure. So that was Lamar, and they're my 1-2 connection. So I'm always good. I'm always good with that. All right. So I want to have a conversation.
Okay.
I need to give an honorable mention to Tyler Bass. Okay. So kicker for the Buffalo Bills, in case nobody knew, it's kicker for the Buffalo Bills. And just do yourself a favor and go take a look at the stats for this cat. Okay. I want to ask you a question, Fantasyland and Mr. Ferg here. I have a problem this week. The Bills are off, as you stated at the beginning of this at the beginning of the show. The Bills are off this week. I don't have anybody I feel is droppable, and Tyler Bass is my kicker. Okay, so the question to Fantasyland is it okay to not play a kicker? Is it okay to not play a full roster? I think is the best way to ask this question. So if you're not playing against me, you're out there in the rest of the league, are you upset if I don't field a full entire roster? So that's number 1. So anybody feel like answering that question, feel free. Ferg, what say you on that?
If you're in a league that has those rules, I mean, I guess you're kind of stuck. You got to drop somebody. But if you're like in our league, I don't think we have a roster rule such as that. Let's say this. I'm in 11 leagues. I have at least 3 teams where I'm not going to play a running back or a tight end just because some of the guys I have on IR, I'm not willing to concede are going to come back yet. And I'm not willing to drop some of my younger running backs just to find a guy to play. I know we haven't gotten into Thursday night yet, but I know Ernest is a hot name on the waiver wire. I think he's up to like 70% of leagues now. But I'm not willing to sacrifice for example, we're on a smaller bench league. Like I'm not going to drop Zeke. I'm not going to drop somebody from Buffalo. I'm not going to drop.
So here's my dilemma. Here's my roster dilemma, Ferg. Okay, and Ian, right? I would definitely have him in the spot. He would just be on a bye because I don't my kicker's off. So here are the players that are not playing for me this week. Okay, Devontae Smith, not dropping Devontae Smith. Antonio Gibson, because he's hurt, probably not going to start this week. Not going to drop Antonio Gibson. Kirk Cousins, it's a 2-quarterback league. Not dropping Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson, 1,000,000% not happening. Allen Robinson, at this point, maybe, but who knows if Justin Fields gets it figured out. And do I drop Allen Robinson for a kicker? Okay, so then Nick Chubb, who's on IR, so that doesn't count, right? So the people I'm starting, it's a 2 wide receiver league. It's a super flex, so it's the 2 quarterbacks. I'm starting AJ Brown and Antonio Brown. So dropping Devontae Smith or Allen Robinson or starting one of those and dropping one of the people that's already playing for me is not an option. So I don't feel like I have any options. Allen Robinson would be the closest, but Alex Collins, if he's hurt, he would be the definite one to drop there, right? Which we don't know yet. And they're playing Monday. And Pete Carroll's never been one to help out anybody. Okay? All right. So while you're contemplating answers out there, Fantasyland, I want to drop some knowledge on you guys. Okay. So this is Tyler Bass's weekly output. Starting at week 1, 13, 5, 16, 18, 9, 15. Okay? So I have a list here that I'm going to go down just real quick of the players that Tyler Bass has outscored so far this year, not in real football, but in fantasy football.
Well, we know what ass wide receiver is on that list.
Allen Robinson is on that list, yes. So I didn't even write him down. Melvin Gordon. He's outscored Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon has 71.60 points. Next, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has 70 points. He's outscored Tony Pollard. Devontae Smith.
Ooh.
Cole Beasley. Dalvin Cook. Chase Claypool. Myles Gaskin. Saquon Barkley. Yes, Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley hurt for 2 weeks. Got it. Understand. Still should not be outscored by a kicker, even at this point through 3 games, those players. Damian Harris. Tyler Boyd. Kyle Pitts. And this is my favorite one of all because I will refuse to have him on my team anymore going forward, a la Cadillac Williams, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
He has outscored every single one of these players, plus more. There's more and more and more. I could write down on this list. I didn't get down far enough to see Allen Robinson's name. But Zach Moss, are you kidding me? These guys, they're outscored by a kicker. So, again, I pose this question. Do I keep Tyler Bass in my lineup not playing? Because do I drop Tyler Bass and pick up another kicker? I agree with you, Ian. 100% agree with you. But when you talk about the number 1 fantasy kicker and he's getting me 14 points a game, tell me who I'm going to drop and tell me who I'm going to pick up that's going to score me 14 points a game or who I'm going to use more than this week. Not a single person. So is it bad for everybody else in the league that I'm not playing a kicker? Sure, I understand why. It was the playoffs. It may be a very different conversation. However, is it fair to me to give up 14 guaranteed points a week?
Nope.
Right. So this is my dilemma. And I don't know what to really do because it's a moral dilemma at this point. It's like, am I that asshole that doesn't play, that doesn't have a roster spot filled?
Well, I'm an asshole. So I'm not going to drop 14, 15 points a game for anyone. Like I said, we already know, like we said, this is the bipocalypse weeks have started. These teams that we named you're probably a 0-5 team if you don't have players off at least one of those teams that we've already named. So I conditioned when I set lineups last week, I was looking for waivers for week 7 and 8 already because I already knew the guys like Diggs, even Zach Moss, Diggs, all your Charger wide receivers, all your Minnesota wide receivers, all your Cowboy wide receivers. There is no way in hell that you're dropping any of those guys unless you're in an 8-team league and you already know you got the first waiver pick anyway. I'm going to get this guy back regardless of what happens. In a real competitive league, no, you're not dropping any of those guys. You just take the loss.
Yeah, and see, the thing is, to add to the drama, I want to win every game too, Ian. I do. But you know what I want to do more than win every game is make the damn playoffs.
Make the playoffs.
There's nothing more that I want this week than to beat Ryan. So Ryan we had on a couple weeks ago, who is the resident New England fan. He's been talking cash junk to me already this week, saying he's going to beat me. He's favored to beat me by 16 points, So I don't know if Alex Collins is droppable or not. Dude got me 17 points last week and pretty much won me my week last week. So, and yes, I know, but my running backs with Chubb being injured and then who the hell knows what's going to happen when he comes off his injury. I don't know. He was almost playing this week, but it's Ernest Johnson, who looks good. So, I mean, he had 13 for 95 last week. So why rush, Chubb back? I don't know. Baker's hurt too. I don't know. Maybe they're just willing to take an L for a few weeks. Who knows? All right. So let's jump into some waiver stuff since we just talked about Ernest real quick.
Okay.
If anybody has any comments about that, please put them in the chat because I'd love to know. I need all the help I can get. So we'll start with Ernest Johnson, who was the number one waiver claim of the week. A lot of people spent their fab money on Ernest Johnson. Whatever you may have had left after all these injuries, maybe you spent it on Chuba Hubbard, maybe you spent it on Elijah Mitchell. Who knows? So whatever fab money you had left, if you're getting Ernest Johnson, you had to spend up on him. I mean, Bass is that high. And seriously, 14 points a week. It's pretty nuts. Automatic. I was down by 9 and knew I had already won with my kicker. So anyway, Jalen Waddle he was owned in 46% of the leagues whenever I pulled this up. And then one of my starts of the week, Ferg and I talked about this, and Ferg laughed at me because he's dropped these people 7 times this year, is the Denver defense. They are playing in Cleveland, and they are 2-point dogs, but Cleveland literally has nobody. It was announced today Baker's not playing. We know Kareem Hunt's not playing. We know Nick Chubb's not playing. We think Odell may be playing. Jarvis Landry may be playing. And so you're looking at Donovan Peoples-Jones and Ernest Johnson and Case Keenum. So we'll see. Denver defense has been pretty okay against the run. I think that they're a very good streaming option on defense. So, Ferg, who you got?
42% of leagues, and I'm a homer. Tua still out there in 42, a lot of leagues. Had 329 and 2 touchdowns last week. Can't blame that loss on him. The aforementioned Donovan Peoples-Jones, only owned in 10% of leagues. 4 catches, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. Don't really care if one of them was a Hail Mary. Still had 2 touchdowns. It's fantasy. Don't think too hard. It's just fantasy football. Don't think too hard.
Get on him, Ian. Get on him.
Deep guys. Kendrick Bourne. We saw what he did with those Cowboys last week. It's a short week. You're missing minimum, 7, 8 Pro Bowl receivers this week. He's only owned in 4% of leagues, averaging 64 yards over the last 4 games. A guy that I don't understand why he's not owned in more leagues, and I think it has more to do with the fact that people just don't like Denver. Tim Patrick, 39% of all leagues, 3 for 42 with a touchdown. He had 6 targets, has not had less than 80 yards or a touchdown in 5 of the 6 games he's played this year.
All right, pause for a second. Tim Patrick is 11 to 12 points a game. This is for sure half-point PPR, 11, 12 points a game. You know what the problem with Tim Patrick is, Ferg? Why he's not owned in more of the league's percentage? It's because his name is Tim Patrick.
Is that what it is?
Give him another name. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't. If his name was Jonnu Smith, he'd be owned in 80% of the leagues, right? So just give him another name, and that's not Tim Patrick. This dude sounds like he bags groceries, right? Like he's the guy that sat behind you in physics class.
If Allen Robinson was getting Tim Patrick's numbers, we would never talk about Allen Robinson.
You're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. I want to add, since you're talking about deep starts, deep streams, Mac Jones. Mac Jones against Kendrick Bourne. Mac Jones against the Jets this week. Jacoby Myers is catching passes, no touchdowns, but he's catching passes. Kendrick Bourne is catching passes. What's his name? Ramondre Stevenson catching passes out there. And Hunter Henry. If for some odd reason he is not owned in one of your leagues, pick him up today. And another one of those deep streams we kind of mentioned a second ago, Donovan Peoples-Jones, because who else are you going to throw the damn ball to? Okay. So, and this dude had a ridiculous Hail Mary catch at the end of the first half last week, which was kind of ridiculous. But Donovan Peoples-Jones would be a very, 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 very good stream this week. And anybody against the Dolphins. So my start of the week is a combo of Matt Ryan and Cordell Patterson because Jeff's lowly Dolphins defense is not very good. Not very good. They're actually last against the pass. They're last against fantasy wide receivers and quarterbacks. So I think that makes for a great, great day. And as Ferg referenced at the beginning of this episode, and I'll let him talk more about this, everybody that plays for the Rams, start them. Ferg, tell us why.
Matt Stafford gets a smack around revenge game against the Lions at home against, although we call the Jets the worst and we say Miami's the worst, we've watched Detroit score points, but we've also watched them every week come up with new creative ways to give away points. Anybody that's playing against the Lions, the Jets, or the Dolphins, if you have an open spot, they should be started. They should be
especially
started.
If they play in blue and gold.
And I'm probably saying this wrong. I hope I'm not saying it wrong. I don't want to get in trouble, but who cares? It's late night anyway. Young Ho Koo. I even have him on my lock list this week as a kicker against the Miami defense because everybody scores against Miami defense. His grandparents will probably score against Miami defense this week. I figured we talked about this before the show started. I say Stafford and them get up 21-0. Stafford has at least 3 touchdowns, 270 yards, and then he turns around and lets Darrell Henderson eat for the next 3 quarters. Darrell Henderson's
that dude, man. Darrell Henderson's that dude. He might be the steal of the draft, period, as of right now. Like, I want to do this, Ferg. So this is week 7 we're going into. Okay, not this week. After next week. Okay, young Waku. There you go. So after next week, after week 8, I want to have like a 20-minute longer episode, and I want to kind of go through a redraft. All right? Okay. I want you and me and the commish, and maybe Ryan, Ian, if you would like to join, we'd love to have you on the show at any point. You can talk junk to Ferg about not trading the Buffalo defense, and we can definitely talk about that. But I would like to have a redraft just to see where people like Darrell Henderson go, to see where Mike Williams goes, right? Like, where are these guys going that are making a huge difference? Where does James Robinson go? So instead of going in the back end of the 3rd round, does this dude sneak up back into the 1st round? Because honestly, besides Derrick Henry, he's probably the best running back right now in fantasy football. Not real football because the Jaguars suck, but fantasy football, James Robinson is that guy. He's that guy. So nobody touches Derrick Henry. So can
we rewind for 1 second? Because we should have a redraft with Ian. Because I have to, in fairness, I'm going to put Ian on the spot here for a second because he can't jump in here and defend himself. He's all down for dropping a kicker because I play in a dynasty league with Ian, and I'm just going to read you some of the names. I'm not going to read you his whole lineup. I'm just going to read you some of the names and why he can afford to drop a kicker. He starts Kyler Murray, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Travis Kelce.
That's y'all's fault for letting him get all that shit.
With Zeke on his bench this week because he's on the bye. So
congratulations.
Never listen to him when it's talking about dropping players. We're talking to the average player who's scrambling to put something together. This guy owns 6 out of the top 20 football players for at least the next 5 to 6 years in this league. So and Calvin Ridley.
Don't let the man try to bring you down, brother.
I'm not bringing him down. I'm just saying you have to put perspective to some of these replies that we get sometimes. About I forgot DK Metcalf as well on his team as well. Yeah, I think he's 5-0, 6-0. Oh, he won. Sure. He lost one. I'm not sure who he lost to. Not sure how that happened.
Somebody that had Derrick on one of the weeks.
It was
somebody that had Lamar Jackson last week. Maybe it was Lamar Jackson last week on his 70-point week. Maybe it was that.
Yeah.
So again, with the more going into the Rams-Lions game, it's a 15-point favorite for the Rams with a 50.5-point over-under. So everybody that can do math really fast, that's a 35-point projection for the Rams. So if you don't have a Ram and there is one on the waiver wire, and that's name is not Larry Roundtree, you can play them. You can play it. Doesn't matter who it is. If it's Van Jefferson, if it's, I don't know why Bobby Trees would be on there, Tyler Higbee, if for some reason he's on your waiver wire, pick him up. Darrell Henderson for sure, but there's no way he's on your waiver wire. But anybody that you can figure out that you think will get some touches, pick them up. 35 points is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of targets to go around. And Matt Stafford is angry. Actually, you know what? Why would he be angry, Ferg? Shouldn't it be golf that's angry?
Golf
that one day he was in sunny LA and the next day he was in Detroit? Like, shouldn't it be him that's mad?
It should be, but he has no talent, so you don't get to be mad.
Yeah.
There's no talent.
True, I guess. Yeah. So, I mean, when your coach comes out in public, stands there at the podium, and literally takes 30 seconds to think about what he's going to say, and still says, you need to do more for your team. I mean, what else do you?
You know, in fairness, in real football talk, I don't really think that it was golf's fault that they lost in the Super Bowl, though. They had a shot. I mean, a lot of quarterbacks don't get a Super Bowl shot. He didn't lose that game for them.
Well, in all fairness, it was Tom Brady. Okay? So Tom Brady doesn't lose very much in the Super Bowl. Tom Brady just doesn't lose very much, period. And if you're going to let them hang around like that, the Bucs are going to beat you in any way. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. They can play special teams. They can play defense. So they can block you up front. You know, I mean, there's just a lot of – they just do everything well, and there's a reason why they won the Super Bowl last year. And good for them. All right. So anything else you want to say about streams of the week, any starts of the week, anything like that you want to go over?
I think you mentioned earlier, make sure Cordero against the Miami defense in a week where it's got to be, seven premier backs missing, plus Chubb and Hunt on injury.
Yep.
Cordero probably lines up to be, I would say, 2. Possibility he could end up actually being 3. If for some reason KC gets on top of Tennessee and they have to go away from the run, then Cordero could easily end up being number 1. I don't see that because KC defense can't stop anybody, so Henry should have 200 yards. And then I say DJ Moore finally gets back off the snide this week. DJ Moore has put together 2 stinkers, I think. I could be wrong. Is
that Lamar? Wrong. I mean, is that so Sam Darnold, is he going to be any good this week?
I don't know if Sam Darnold has to be great for DJ Moore to be great for you this week.
He needs to have more than 14. He needs to have more than 14 completions and 160 yards.
Well, DJ Moore not drop the ball 8 times either. He was 5 of 13 for like 52 yards. You got to help your guy out. A guy that's getting beat up by the entire world. You got to help him out, DJ Moore. That's back-to-back weeks of nothing. It's 5 catches for less than 50 yards in back-to-back weeks. Panthers started off hot, but then they started doing Panther things, and they're back to where they normally are going to be, 500 team. Right.
So your game that you'll be watching on Sunday, the Falcons and the Dolphins, is a 47.5 over-under, and the Falcons are only favored by 2.5, and it's in Miami. Okay, so the weather looks okay. It doesn't look like there's going to be any rain. Looks like it's going to be sunny. Chance of late thunderstorms. So when you're talking, 48 points, favored by 2, so you're talking about 26?
26.
You know, or so or 28. So, but I think it's going to be more than that. Like, if I was a betting man and I put money on these over-unders, I would say as long as the weather's good, it's going to be a bad day. For the Dolphins, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And I don't know if Tua can keep up with Matt Ryan. Calvin Ridley's back. So Calvin Ridley's going to steal some targets from Cordero Patterson. So I think Cordero will probably be more of a used in a running back situation, coming out of the slot, maybe putting him in motion, jet sweeps, kind of stuff like that. But when he gets into the open space, he looks a lot like Derrick Henry to me. He doesn't run with the veracity that Henry does, but Cordero will try to run past you and get around you, not run over you. So I think that's another game that if you have anybody for Atlanta, you want to start them. Anybody that's viable, leave Russell Gage off if he's for some reason playing this week. But you do have to play Kyle Pitts, play Calvin Ridley, play Mike Davis, play Cordero Patterson, play all those guys. Miami's terrible. Miami's trash. So anything else on that front before we get to the Thursday night game?
I have actually had Matty Ice as my number one streamer at QB this week. He was available in more than 50% of leagues as the last time I checked. But that was about 1 o'clock.
That's because in non 2 QB leagues, you can drop a quarterback and pick him up the next week. Because honestly, like me, I have Matt Ryan in 2 leagues. He sits on my bench, even in my 2 quarterback league, because I have Lamar and Kirk Cousins. And Matt Ryan is not playing over Lamar. And he's at this point in the season, Kirk Cousins is the number 2 or 3 quarterback. So I'm not playing him over him either. And so in single QB leagues, in a single QB league, I would have dropped Matt Ryan to pick up another kicker and kept Tyler Bass on my bench. Like, that's what I would have done, but I don't have that luxury. So 2 QB leagues, you got to stack 3. In 1 QB leagues, you only really need 1 with viable streaming options after that, which if you're in a 1 QB league, there's going to be plenty of viable streaming options at the quarterback position. All right, so let's talk about some Thursday night football. This was going to be interesting. All right, now we've already mentioned a lot of players from this game. It is a 41-point over-under. I'll say that again. 41 points. Cleveland's favored by 2.
Yeah.
So you're talking 21-19, 22-19, however you want to add those things up. There is not a lot of points to be had in this game. We already know Chubb's out, Hunt's out, questionable for Jarvis and Odell, but they said that, I think Stefanski said today, Jarvis will be out there moving around a little. So who knows what that means? Who knows? We know Baker's not playing. So it's like, honestly, their right tackle's out, their left tackle's out. That's why Denver was my streaming defense of the week. One of the best pickups you can probably have this week. And again, it's 41 points, guys. 41 points. Tragic. So there's very few startable players in this game. They all come from, except for Ernest Johnson, they all come from the side of the Denver Broncos. So you got Cortland Sutton, you got Tim Patrick, you can start both Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. Teddy Two Gloves, even if you have a desperate streaming need, you can grab Teddy Two Gloves out there. But it's like, Jeff, what do you say about this game? This has the possibility to be the least exciting primetime matchup we've had yet this year.
This is mediocre. Mediocre at best, NFL. And I know that's not what they were thinking with the Browns defense and Baker Mayfield and Chubb and Hunt. But this one turned out to be really mediocre. And throw another name, you might get Jerry Jeudy out. Fangio hasn't said that Judy's coming back. But
he was designated off the IR, wasn't he? So he is eligible to return. That's right. I forgot about that.
I don't want to throw Jeudy out there though first game and be relying on him.
Not against the Browns defense, not against their secondary. No.
Now these waiver wire picks from the Browns, like we said, Ernest Johnson, of course, highest pickup in the league this year. I mean, in the most leagues this week, but he's still only scheduled for 11 points. You can deep dive I hear Demetric Felton a lot. I see him in the Yahoo League. He's eligible at wide receiver and running back, but then you realize he's had no carries in the NFL yet. And then
you realize he's someone you've never heard of until just right this very second.
Yeah, and then John Kelly, a name that I remember vaguely from the Rams from a couple of years ago. They brought him up off the practice squad. He's owned in 0% of leagues. And if we're down to, and like I said, if you're in a 2 QB league and folks are stacking, there are going to be some teams that probably have 2, 3, even 4 QBs on their roster when you're kind of stuck. If you're desperate enough to play Case Keenum, more power to you. Maybe the fantasy gods will show some love onto you. Maybe you'll get a Minnesota Miracle type moment with Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't know. Even Yahoo being optimistic is only right now saying 15 points out of Case Keenum. He hasn't started a game since 2019. Melvin Gordon. We're going to start Gordon, like you said, Gordon, Williams, Sutton, Fant, Teddy Two Gloves, probably the best option, looking at 23 points in the regular Yahoo PPR league.
Okay,
But
that's not bad.
He's still injured, so I don't know who the backup is to Denver. If anybody wants to know, is it Drew Lock's team? They didn't fire him. I thought they probably left him in the last stadium they played in after that game.
Well, he just makes bad.
The only guy that I'm really stuck with, other than Sutton, because you might have some other options other than Fant, is I'm going to throw to the wind and say Tim Patrick has a big game. Browns can't stop him. Browns defense hasn't been great. It hasn't been great this year.
Well, let's just be honest. They're not going to have the ball a lot, right? So the Browns offense is probably not going to have the ball a lot. There's going to be a lot of 3-and-outs. I don't know what the weather is supposed to be. So that may change things a lot. Let's see what the weather is supposed to be like in Cleveland.
Cleveland on a Thursday. Probably what?
Yeah, let's
40s?
see. I got it right here.
40s, rainy.
I mean, that sounds right. 66 and rain. Okay. So that changes a lot of things. So then you're talking about big games out of the Denver backfield and Noah Fant. I mean, there's got to be a lot of check downs, a lot of short passes, especially if it's raining hard. I mean, you got to think Cleveland, it's 66 degrees, but with that rain, what kind of wind's going to be coming? Right? So there may not be a lot of ball throwing in this game. It's going to be a lot of defense, a lot of running. And you know what? If you need a kicker and your name's not me, because I'm not dropping Tyler Bass, one of these kickers, the Cleveland kicker, or McMahon, is McMahon still the kicker in Denver? This might be a very good game. A very good game to pick up one of these guys. And if you're talking about maybe, like, if this is a 41-point over-under, this could be a field goal fest. I mean, Ferg, could you see it being 18-15? Something like that?
I could see McManus ending up with 6 field goals and being one of your lead scorers next week when we're looking at this again on Monday night. And you're like, well, damn, McManus got me 18 points.
Exactly. Like, didn't you say before we started the show 17-13?
17-13 is my prediction for that score.
17-13 Denver, right? That was your prediction. So 17-13 Denver. I mean, just to make it interesting, just to make it fun, I'll go 21-9 Denver. 21-9 Denver. Right? Don't even make the spread. Shitty weather. Two teams that struggle to score. Now if Judy's back, and Judy takes some pressure away from Tim Patrick, I agree with you. Tim Patrick could have a 2-touchdown game. It may be like 4 catches, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns, or maybe 2 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You don't know with the bland name Tim Patrick what he's gonna put out there. And so Thursday night, I don't know, people. I don't know. I mean, it might be a snooze fest, but luckily for everybody else, this is a very, very, very good sports week. So not only do you have NFL, of course, but NBA started 2 nights ago, right? So you have the majority of the opening night games coming on tonight, and you got playoff baseball, baby. You got playoff baseball. And like, even if you don't like baseball, playoff baseball is exciting. It's exciting. So it's a lot of sports to look forward to tomorrow. If the game is a snooze fest,
turn the
maybe
channel.
hop on your waiver wire, see about doing some more work, see about maybe throwing some trades together, maybe taking advantage of the people that don't really look at fantasy football and like, oh, Ernest Johnson is the starter for the Browns. Let's trade for him. Might want to take advantage of that. So, Ian, peace out. If you ever want to come on the show, Jeff wants to have you. He wants to talk about it. He wants to talk about it out loud to the people. So, and definitely don't let him do this by himself, because he will hype himself up, Ian. So, all right. So, Ferg, is there anything else that we have? I mean, this is a 45-minute show, which is what we planned on when we started this whole thing, about 45 minutes to an hour. And so, Maryland would be super proud.
The comment says Tatum is the GOAT. So somebody's give me a Boston Knicks score from. I see that.
Look, did you see that meme of Jason Tatum last year and Jason Tatum this year? And I think it was CJ McCollum or Damian Lillard that tweeted, "This is how you get drug tested the next day."
Exactly how you get
side by side from last year to this year. So I don't really like talking good things about ex-Duke players, but I do like Jason Tatum.
Well, we know we're Celtics guys here. I will say this: Jason Tatum did piss me off taking a picture in a Kobe jersey yesterday, but I'm gonna let him live with that one today.
Was it at least a Lower Merion jersey?
No, in the Lakers jersey, did a photo shoot in Laker colors. If that's not LeBron, that don't have LeBron GM written all over it. I don't know what it is.
Well, they better sign him, or he's going to LA, and he'll play with 55-year-old LeBron.
All right, Clint, before we go, Clint, give us your stone cold lock guarantee thing that's going to happen this week that doesn't involve the Rams or the Dolphins.
The thing that will happen this week. Man, oh man, what can I say? Okay, so I'll say that Javonte Williams has a breakout game. I say 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns.
We're gonna review that study next week. We're gonna look that one up.
15, 80, and 2.
That's big
only
game.
Because Carolina has an off week this week. Somebody got to do the work for the Tar Heels, and Ferg, I spared you that conversation, so we don't have to have that.
It's basketball season.
Yeah, it's right. It's basketball season.
You
don't want to talk about that either. So, all right. So write it down, Ferg. So give me yours. What do we got? I'll write yours down. What do we got?
Lock next week.
Lock of the week.
Lock of the week.
Again, doesn't involve the Rams or the Dolphins.
I tell you what, give the hometown. We'll give our hometown here some love. Sam Darnold, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Giants this week.
Wow. Okay. All right. Any of those rushing? Because he was the NFL rushing leader.
He was in. It will be a combination of rushing and passing. I say Sam Darnold at least 300 yards passing in some kind of form of 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns. Okay. All right. So Sam, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jeff's lock of the week. All right. So, Jeff, how are we not going to give the people what they want? We forgot to do Jeff's Burnett's Vodka bottom shelf player of the week.
The bottom shelf player of the week?
From last week. We forgot to give the people what they want.
All right. So the very top of the Burnett's list, I wish the commissioner was here for this one. Mr. Daniel Jones, a Charlotte native. 24 of 51, 240 yards, 3 interceptions, and a fumble. Ended off his glorious day with -2 points. And that's without getting hurt. -2 points.
Woo!
How do you throw the ball 51 times and end up at -2 points?
Look, there hasn't been a performance that epic since Rex Grossman. And in case nobody's heard this story before, I was playing in this league of record, and my ex-wife was playing in the league of record at the time. This is a long, long, long time ago. We have been in possession of this league for 21 years. And in the beginning, she was playing in this league, and I had Rex Grossman. I was up by 12 points. She had nobody. I had Rex Grossman. I won by 4. And I was up by 12 going into the game. Bears, Cardinals. I will never forget it. I lost 8 points, and I was shaking in my space boots. So anyway, so I think a Rex Grossman story is the only way to conclude this episode of the Fantasy Football Show with No Name. So until next week, submit your questions on YouTube. Phoenix Physical Therapy and Wellness, 500 Benson Road in Garner. And you can follow us at NC100 on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Follow J Schmo Sports. That's JSCHMO Sports on any major platform, including all podcast platforms. And if you guys have any questions, please leave us any comments, questions there, or on the YouTube channel. And Mr. Danye will make sure that we get to them. So for Mr. Ferg, Big Jeff, and his Dolphins, they're getting that shit out of here. I am Clintonian, or again, Ferg, what can you call me? Champ. We'll see you guys next week.
Shout out to Winston-Salem State homecoming this weekend. I'll see you there.